welcome back to the Keys to Therapy. Today's episode is all about pay splits and flat rates and what all of this stuff means. So, I was always paid whatever the salary amount was at any job that I had. So it was you were paid this much an hour, or you are paid this salary throughout the year. And so it was always really consistent at any place I'd worked before. So working in community mental health or working in a residential facility. I mean, I think almost every job is going to give you pretty much a like flat rate, either hourly or here's your salary for the year, and then that's divided into whatever your hours are that you work, and your paycheck is consistent. So I never thought about what any of this part means, either receiving a flat rate at a job or getting a split, until I started looking into working at a group practice. So I'm sure there's other jobs out there that do something similar with the pay scales, but I know for the most part, this is like a group practice thing. So if you are a therapist and you're considering working at a group practice, there's lots of pros to working at one, and there's a couple cons too. But I think that it's a great place to work when you are starting out, because you have a team around you, you've got different people that can support you, people you can ask questions to, stuff like that. So that can be really helpful. Also, it can be a lot more flexible than most jobs, because private practice, you just work less hours, and things are just more flexible typically overall. A lot of group practices will, depending on like office sharing and how many people work there and all of that type of stuff, but they may have a certain expectation of how many hours or how many clients you're supposed to see a week. But a lot of them will let you pick what those hours are that you're working, because some people want to work early morning and there'll be clients there for that. And some people like working later in the evening and there will be clients there for that. So if you want a job that is not so like 9 to 5, 8 to 5, whatever, then this may be a good option for you. So if you know that you want to be in a private practice at some point, maybe you're figuring out if that's something that you want to start for yourself in the future, or if it's a path you even want to go down, then it's nice to work at a group practice and get a feel for what that's like, and the different rhythm of it, and scheduling, and when you work best, and things like that, before you jump into your own. So it can be really great. The only thing is, the pay is so different than any of the other typical jobs. Benefits are really different. So in this episode in particular, I want to discuss the pay part, because honestly, that's the part that most people want to know about and care about anyway, to start out with. We need to know how much we are getting paid. And especially when you have a lot of student loans, maybe you live by yourself, maybe you've just got a lot of expenses, maybe you've got kids, whatever the situation is. Honestly, unless you have like inherited a ton of money, you're going to want to know what the money situation's like and what all of this financial stuff means. So I will try to break that down for you today. Now, when you are looking for a job at a group practice, and like I said, there may be some other places that do this type of pay scale too, but I'm just going to use group practices for now because it's the most common one that does this. So if you want to work at a group practice, most times when you see it advertised, it's either going to say flat rate of $50 an hour, or it's going to say split, 60-40 split, where the therapist gets the 60, 50-50 split. I've seen 70-30 split. So there's lots of different options out there. And sometimes that can be confusing, because if you are looking to make money, and you're most likely going to be working less hours than you would at a traditional like agency, you are going to have a difficult time at first calculating like, what's better for me? Should I do the flat rate, and then I know like I'm going to always make $50 an hour and I can decide how many hours I want to work and what kind of salary I want to bring in with that? Or should you do the split, and then you have the potential for making more, but it's dependent on a lot of factors? So there's so many pieces that go into it. So the first one I want to cover is the flat rate. That one's a lot simpler to understand, and it's a lot easier to calculate too. So say that you want to work at a group practice and they offer a flat rate of $50 an hour. So regardless of how many clients you see, or regardless of if it's an insurance-based practice, whatever those fees are, doesn't matter. The practice is going to pay you $50 an hour. Side note, I didn't know this either until I worked at a group practice, but insurances, if the place that you're going to work at takes insurance, the insurance company is the one that dictates how much money you're paid. So the practice can say, we charge $150 an hour and we accept these insurances. Now, if Blue Cross Blue Shield is one of those insurances and you as the contract owner, you're the practice owner, you sign a contract with Blue Cross Blue Shield and they say, cool, we'll put you on our panel, you'll be contracted with us, but this is the rate that you're going to get paid. And they say you only get $100 an hour. Then it doesn't matter if the fee on the website's $150. If the contract says Blue Cross Blue Shield's only going to pay $100 an hour, then that's the rate. So when you are looking for jobs, don't just go off of what the rate is that's listed on the website for that particular practice, because that is, if they take insurance, that is not the amount that is coming through. A lot of times it's much lower than what is listed on the website. And they may say it's $100 an hour, right? So say Blue Cross Blue Shield is like, yep, I'll pay you $100 an hour. That's only for a 60-minute session. If you do a 45-minute session, it usually drops down $20 or $30. If you do a 30-minute session, usually drops down another 20 or 30 from that. So you are making different amounts depending on how long you see the client for. And a 60-minute session is really 53 minutes to 60 minutes. So if you saw the client for 51 minutes and that's the code you put down because that's what's accurate, well, now you're making whatever that number is at that rate. So maybe then it's $80 for a 45-minute session. So if that's the case, and I'll probably make a whole video about all of that because it's kind of confusing. And again, it's something that I didn't know about until I was at a group practice and I'm like, but your website says $150. So how come we're only getting paid $85 for this one insurance? Or how come that was $85, but then the split is different? It's a lot. So as you're looking for these jobs, don't just go off of what the website says is the amount of money that they make. Also, sometimes that amount that's listed on the website is for licensed therapists too. It's just like, it's private pay and it's licensed therapists. If you're an associate therapist, provisionally licensed, whatever they call it in your state, then you most likely are getting a totally different amount, typically much lower than that. And so there's a lot of questions to ask when it comes to that. So back to the topic. So if it's a flat rate, right? Say that you were going to start this group practice and they say, we're paying you $50 an hour. What's nice about that is that now you know, regardless of what the minutes are, if it's 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever it is, you are making that same amount for however many hours you work. So that could be really nice just for consistency, just for you to know, like, this is what I make. Sometimes some insurances will pay, I know at one point, a place that I was at, one insurance paid around like 80 something, but then another insurance paid like 130 for the same 60-minute session. They just had different rates that you contracted with. So basically you're still seeing a client for 60 minutes, but if they had this insurance, the practice was paid 80 something. If they had this one, it was paid like 130. So it's totally up to the insurance how much you get. So if you knew you were getting that flat rate, say that that flat rate was $100 a session, right? Well, if you've got a bunch of the clients that it's the $80, cool, you just made more money than you would have otherwise. But if you have a lot of clients that are the 130 and your flat rate is $100, well, now you've lost that 30. So it can benefit you, but it also can take away from your ultimate paycheck. And it really just depends on how many clients that you have, and what the insurance is that they are on. And a lot of times you don't get to pick. It's kind of unethical. It's very unethical, actually, to be like, I know that we take these insurances, but I only want the clients with the highest paying. Now, if you're at a place that you're only on the panels with one or two of the highest paying, that's fine, because those are the contracts you chose to sign. But you can't be at a place that takes multiple different types of contracts and only ask for the ones that pay the most. So there's lots of levels to it. But again, you know, it's one amount for the amount of hours you work. So if you are like, okay, if it's $50 an hour and you want to you need to make a specific amount of money every 2 weeks, then you can do the math for that. Say, okay, if it's $50 an hour and I see this many clients, and then you take out taxes, then you can decide if that's worth it, or do the math that way and go, okay, well, here's the amount I need to make. How many clients do I need to see in order to take home this amount? So that's a little bit easier to calculate. You can also, you have a guess on how much you want to make. You kind of make how much you want to make at that point by taking on that amount of clients to get you to where you want to be. So, and there's transparency, right? Here it is. You get this amount. You work this many hours. Pay stubs clear as day. So that part's really nice about a flat rate. It's just, again, you might be shortchanged a little bit if the clients you see their insurance is paying a lot more. Now, if it's private pay, it's whatever. It's the same across the board. It doesn't matter. And that's a little easier to deal with. But a lot of places take insurance, so you're going to have those different layers to it. So flat rate, one amount, you get paid that consistently. Your checks will still vary with cancellations and reschedules and emergency appointments and all of that. But you can kind of generally decide like how much you want to bring home and what that looks like. So great for consistency, flat rate. The other option, which is what I've seen is to be the more common option, is to take a split. So when I worked at a group practice, the split was 60-40. So I was a W-2 employee, and I covered that in the last video, what the differences are. And I was a W-2 employee, and it was a 60-40 split. So I got 60% of whatever I brought in, and the group practice got 40%. So, and it was an insurance-based practice. So like I said, there was like multiple types of insurances, and then there's multiple types of sessions, which each have their own fee. And it was really difficult for me to calculate how much I was going to bring home. It was nice because a 60-40 split is pretty good for private practice, because as a W-2 employee, it's pretty good. Because then, you know, they're covering half your taxes, and there's like certain things that are nice about that. Usually if you're a W-2 employee, there's like supplies you can get and like stuff like that. But it's just like, it was very, very difficult at an insurance-based practice to predict at all what it was that I was going to be able to take home. I just had no idea. You know, it's already tough sometimes in private practice with cancellations. If it's a holiday week, if, you know, it's summer and a bunch of clients are on vacation, or whatever the situation is, like it can be a lot. So it's just when you have a split, it's a lot more difficult. So if I saw like, say 6 clients at the 130, right, 60-minute session, $130, but I get 60% of that, then I can calculate this pool of people. But then I would have to also be like, how many people did I see at 60 minutes with a different insurance, and what does that look like? But then I had 2 or 3 that were 45-minute sessions. So what does that pay look like, and what's 60% that I get of that? Like, so much math. Which also means that there's a lot more room for error. If the group practice does not have a great financial system, then there's way more room for error with what you can get paid, because there's just too many moving parts. So you're going to really have to be on top of how much you are bringing home, how much is expected, how much you're bringing home. Do the numbers match up with the pay stub they give you versus what you actually worked these last 2 weeks? Like, there is so many different elements that go into it. So definitely be mindful of that. While it is nice, because if it is that $130 session and I get 60%, well, cool. I just made more than I would have if it was a flat rate. But it's a lot trickier to calculate and predict. So, And again, if it's insurance based, it's very, very complicated to figure all of that out. But if it's a private pay, it's going to be a lot easier, because then you're always going to get 60% of whatever that fee is. And then you kind of are almost at the same place that a flat rate person would be, right? You know how many clients you're going to need to see a week to make the desired amount of income. So when you're looking at the options, there's again so many layers to it, that you want to make sure that when you're interviewing at a group practice or any place that either does a split or they do a flat rate, definitely ask a couple really key questions. So ask, if it's a group practice, for example, ask if they take insurance, because that's going to let you know right there how complicated this process is about to be. If they do take insurance, a lot of insurances have a clause in their contract that says that you're not allowed to discuss how much they're paying you for sessions. I don't love that. I think that's like gatekeeping to the max, but a lot of people, they are getting paid different rates, even in the same state with the same insurance. Some people have been paneled longer, and maybe they've advocated for themselves, and so they're now getting raises from insurance and making more. Insurance can also go back and decrease their rate, so sometimes that can be tricky. There's just like a lot of pieces to it that can be really difficult. So I think it's a little shady that they don't allow people to share how much each one's making, but just know that, because if you're interviewing at a group practice and you're like, okay, well, you guys take these two insurances, like how much do they pay? And the group practice owner can't really tell you like the exact amount unless you're an employee, understand that that's why. You know, you also typically can't look up the amount either. So what you can ask though in an interview is, I see that you take this, this, and this insurance. Can you give me an idea of what the average cost is, or what the range is for a 60-minute session and a 45 and a 30 minutes? So then you can know, are they more on the $85 side? Or are they more on the $130 side? So you're going to need that info. And even if they say like, oh, well, we can't really tell, you could say, well, you could possibly give me a range. So are we talking, you know, under $100? Are we talking around, you know, $115 to $130? So, and that is not excluded for most contracts. You can at least discuss a range. But you need to know before you sign an employment contract, kind of what are you expecting to bring here? Like, what are you expecting to get paid? So I would ask about those basic rates. If they're private pay, absolutely ask what that rate is. And that will make things a lot easier. Ask how many clients a week are expected of you, so that you have an idea of what it is that they're looking for, and you can do some of the math for that too. Also then ask, how are they getting these clients? Because a lot of times you don't start at a place like a private practice and you have a whole list of 20 clients that are sitting there, like just knocking at your door. It takes time to build up. You know, agencies tend to have people like constantly coming in, and some practices do too, but a lot don't, and they can't guarantee you a caseload. It just depends on who walks in the door, but you want to know what their marketing strategies are and how many calls they're getting a week. So ask them about that too, because maybe you can deal with a smaller amount of money for a bit, but you need to know at what point is your caseload going to be full? How are they finding these clients, and how many is full to them? So definitely look into that stuff. But overall, as you're looking into jobs, what I would do regardless of a fee, flat rate, split, whatever it's going to be, really look at your finances and look at how much you need to be making. And that in itself may deter you from going the private practice route for a bit. Or you may say, well, I'm doing pretty well. I really am valuing the flexibility and that freedom of choosing my hours way more than I am right now, the financial piece, because I'm pretty stable. And that's a chance that you want to take and switch to like more of a private practice type setting. But know the amount of money you need to live, like that's, and maybe just like actually live, not just like pay your bills, but have some kind of fun somewhere in there. Savings maybe would be great. But look at that first. Then start doing some of the math and then decide, is a flat rate best for you? Is a split? And sometimes you might not know those answers until you're actually doing the interview and you're seeing what those numbers might look like. But don't be afraid to ask. You know, like I said, sometimes they can't tell you the exact number, but they can generally tell you a range. And if somebody's not willing to tell you a range, I would see that as a red flag for sure. You can't sign a contract and you don't even know anywhere near the amount of money that you would be getting paid. That's not cool. So run if that's the case. But I hope that this clarified things. If you guys watched this and you're more confused, or part of it made sense but the other part doesn't, or whatever else, just leave a comment below and let me know, and I can try to clarify any parts of this that might be confusing. Because to me, when I started, all of this was new and all of this was confusing. It was like an entirely different language that I didn't know and I had to learn as I went. So I'm really hoping that this will clarify some things and maybe help you get into a job position that gets you what it is that you need, or has the potential at least to get you there. So definitely leave some comments or questions if they come up for you, but hopefully this clarified a good amount. So if you want to stay on top of future episodes where you get more clarification about insurance and group practices and like some of this stuff, then follow along and subscribe below, and then you can keep up with what's going on here. But I hope that you all learned something today. I hope that it was helpful, and I will see you next episode. Thanks. Bye.